Hey there, welcome. We have a special guest today, and I want to welcome her, Jessica Zwaal. Thank you, Jessica, for being here.
Hello, Jacob and Ruben. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Great. Jessica, before we even start, we like to ask people to tell us what they do after school. And can you do that for us? Tell us what your current job is.
So I currently work for Montebello Unified. I'm a teacher on special assignment. I work at Montebello High School, and I help coordinate the Title I funds and the Title I programs at our school, and along with other duties as assigned.
Now you go ahead.
And so those are my primary responsibilities. I've been with the district for over 20 years now, in education for about 24 years.
Oh, wow. That's nice. Now, Jessica, we're going to be talking about your other duties because you also work with the union, correct? And can you tell us your position on that?
Right. So currently I'm the vice president of the Montebello Teachers Association.
Great. Now, before we get to that, I do want to ask you, you've been out of the classroom for a little bit here. What was your thinking and regarding leaving the classroom, and do you miss it?
There are aspects that I miss. I love interacting with students, so I'm glad that my out of classroom position is at a school site, because during supervision, with the sub shortage, I've gotten the opportunity to sub several classrooms. With the intervention programs, I still get to connect with the students, meet with the students. I'll still do a summer school gig, tutor.
Oh, nice.
And so I still get that piece. I think when the position came up, and I was approached at, possibly, looking into applying, I think it was time for a new challenge. I had worked at the elementary for 11 years. I was at the middle school for another 11 years. I was an AVID coordinator at my site, and I'd like the duties that came with the AVID coordinator and how many students we were able to impact through that program. So being able to oversee Title I, I could see that I could help influence, more and help get these programs in place. So
you've had experience in all three levels, elementary, middle, and
right. Yeah, definitely have some insight. However, my high school position started 3 weeks before the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
But I have learned a lot.
Okay. And you're on campus right now?
I am on campus.
Now, when you say Title I, for those who might not know, what do you mean by Title I?
So Title I students are those who are low social economic status. Those are the students who would normally qualify for free lunch or reduced lunch. At this time, though, in California, all students in the public schools get free lunch.
I know that. Okay.
And that's awesome. I hope that stays.
Is that just lunch or also breakfast? I know a lot of schools have breakfast too.
Breakfast and lunch. So now all
Okay.
students are entitled, so nobody's punching in their numbers right now.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. I know that's a lot of work. Excellent. And now, Jessica, I think you're wearing your union shirt. Is that correct?
I am. I'm wearing my Red for Ed t-shirt.
Okay. There you go.
Get it a little bit.
We see the bear, and I don't think I've ever seen that logo before.
So I got this one out of the NEA convention. So, all associations will elect representatives to go to the National Education Conference that happens once a year. Great. So we like to wear, we sit by states. So all 50 states, or most of all 50 states, are there with their elected representatives from the various delegations. So we like to have something to wear to help us identify ourselves with California.
Now, what made you be interested in being in that position and being part of the union and being, as a representative?
I think probably, my mentors at my elementary school were very actively involved when I first started, in terms of just making their voice heard and their concerns heard, and the importance of that. And when I transferred to the middle school, I didn't see that quite as much. I worked at a really nice middle school. Everybody was a tight community. Everyone got along. It was a small school. But eventually their there was some corruption in the district.
I think I remember this.
Um, you know, all of a sudden we had some people who were wearing big shoes, who weren't necessarily using the funds to make sure that our students received what they needed. And it was the union who, CSCA as well as MTA, who started kind of voicing their concerns, and the concerns began to get louder. It got to the point though where there was a point where they pink slipped everybody, not like everybody with maybe at the time like 18 years and under worth of experience.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
All of a sudden there was a day and people were getting called. And when it went up to year 10, and people were sad, it was like hallways that were getting called.
Oh my God.
Even at the admin level, if you looked at the admin looked pretty beat up as they were calling people in by in to hand them this pink slip. And it even got into my year. I believe the only reason that I didn't get pink slip was because my last name started with Z.
Oh,
because we
Maybe.
had they
Yeah.
went into our year, because I had friends at other school sites who started when I started. They got pink slips, but at my school we happened to have a Y, an XYZ, and we didn't. So I think we made the cut based on our last names in that area, because we were many of the teachers who got hired during 20 to 1, so there were large volumes of us in that year. But not only, it was really bad. And then not only that, we had new hires, new teachers who were getting non-reelected. And through the union, we learned that, administrative can non-reelect teachers for any reason, and they don't have to state why. However, economics can't be one of them. Finance can't be one of the reasons.
Oh, it can be.
It cannot. It cannot.
Or cannot. Okay.
So through the union, we were actually able to take it to court.
Oh, wow.
Those non-reelects were rescinded, and then we ended up, and it affected about 25 teachers. And then we were able to put those teachers on a priority list in terms of getting called back. And those teachers have actually, had the opportunity, many of them had the opportunity to come back, and, they become teachers of the year. I know one who's teacher of the year. A couple of them are now TOSAs, and they're doing incredible things. But what a horrible action for a new teacher. I mean, it's so hard as it is coming in, learning it, and then coming into this mess, getting a non-reelect, and you're like, what am I going to do? What should I do? And so that's how I became more involved, because I saw my teachers, friends struggling. I was kind of felt safe because I didn't have the pink slip, but I knew it was wrong.
Sure.
That I was the only person in my hallway who didn't get a pink slip.
Man, I remember those days, and I know Montebello had it a little tougher, like you said, because they were having some difficulties with some of those people. But it's never a fun time, and I'm glad we're not seeing that right now, and hopefully we won't see that again, at least on our lifetime. Good.
And in fact, isn't there? You mentioned, Jessica, that there was a shortage. Is there a sub shortage you mentioned?
Well, now there is a sub shortage, right? Like we're all feeling it at the school sites. There is nobody's subbing, right? We came back from the pandemic. It used to be maybe a college kid fresh out of college. I know when my daughter first graduated and she wasn't sure what she was going to do, I said, well, why you figure it out? I said, you can try subbing for a little bit. That'll buy you some time. You coach, Yeah. But we're not getting people to apply. I mean, I've heard of them having.
I cover all the time, Jessica. I know it's tough. There's not enough subs at all.
And there was a time a couple years ago where we didn't have the subs, and we were like, well, you need to hire them. You need to fly the position. It should be something that's constant on EdJoin. So in our contract, we were able to, if you were at a high school, if you had to sub, then you're getting the per diem for subbing for that period. We were able to get the teachers the right to, at the elementary, to say no after 3 times. And again, that was to incentivize the hiring of subs. And now it's just a national shortage. But even as a union, we have to advocate, like, although subs isn't in our area, the pay, right? Everybody in around me in the neighboring districts of Montbello Unified, they're getting paid much more to substitute
Really?
than they are at my district. And it's like, well, I think we need to do something about that.
Sure.
Like, what do we have to
Attract them,
do
right? Yeah.
to attract it? Because we're paying, perhaps the 160 a day, but Alhambra's paying 205. And then if it's a long term, I think there was one district I saw, I don't know if it's neighboring or if it's central, that was going up to 250.
Really? Oh my gosh. Yeah, but that's
Right,
because there's not enough, like you said. I mean, you got to do something to bring them in, and you want good ones too, right? You want good people. Oh my,
right.
that's that.
And we do need the subs, because I don't know if you see it at your school. I know we keep hearing declining enrollment, we need
Yeah.
less people. But I see this wave of retirement showing up. The last kind of
Big
group of our
time.
baby boomers are
Ooh.
ready to exit, and we are going to need to attract the teachers. And a lot of the times we get the young kids who are
Mm-hmm.
subbing. He'll say, you know what, I like this, I'm going to go ahead and take this on.
I'm glad we're talking about this because there's people out there right now probably looking at us, maybe saying, "Hey, is there jobs available?" No, there is. This is a great time to get into education if you want to teach. Now, it's not for everybody. If you really have to have a passion, right, Jessica? Because I mean, we don't
Right,
want anybody doing it.
right. Yeah, you have to have a passion. It's a great place to be. You can connect with kids. You can help make a difference. Um, but it's not easy work.
No, it's not.
Yes, and
Um,
it's not easy work, and I just had somebody observe my class, a candidate for teaching, and they had that, what you said, the passion. They seemed interested for all the right reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's good that you're working with in that capacity. Isn't it true that some of it's not always financial, the interests of the union isn't it also other criteria, other issues,
Mm.
such as stole evaluations, how they're conducted, notices, warnings? What are some of the prevalent issues popping up outside of financial?
I think there's a couple of things that are happening. One thing that actually came up at this board meeting, um, that I heard admin proclaim loudly while they were
Mm-hmm.
looking at a professional development grant, was that in our last bargaining efforts, we created a professional development committee. Right? We kept saying in our contract, we need input, but that input wasn't necessarily getting there when the decisions were being made for district-wide professional development. So we were able to create this committee so that admin and teacher leaders could work as educational partners
Mm.
to see that this is what the teachers are asking for, and then they can bring up the compliance issues that they need to meet so that we can create professional learning that's meaningful across the district,
Man.
but that we could also look to our own teachers, because we have some teachers that are talented and outstanding, and wow, the things that they do in their classroom that they are willing to share is amazing. It doesn't always have to be a consultant. We have the consultants
Yes.
on our campuses.
We have a
um,
really, we do have great people. You're right. I mean, we have so many resources, and why not tap into that?
I
Jeez.
almost wonder, Jessica, if it's like if an admin was here, they would say, "Well, there's this money we have to spend." What would you know what I mean? Like there's this X amount of dollars we have to spend, so we hire this consultant for $50,000 for a speech. What would you say to? Well, you just said it. Wow, we have the talent on our campus. Let's use it.
right, we have to create the time, we have to create the incentive to want to choose, and we also need it to be meaningful, right? Teachers are going to go if it catches their attention, right? If it's going to be relevant to their classroom, they know their colleagues are doing it, they're going to attend, right? And again, right now there's a lot of funding that is coming into education, and we really need to work as partners to be able to figure out how to best utilize this funding so that our students get what they need. um, and right now it's like I'm getting the feeling that we have a lot of administrative decisions hurrying up and making the decisions, but they're forgetting our feedback. And then people don't attend, and then the money's not getting spent, or consultants are showing up to a small audience and they're making tons of money for it. And so we have to create those opportunities, just to make it interesting, make it impactful.
Now, is there, like, right now, this is obviously a big piece, but what else has been on your plate recently regarding things that, because, in the news, sometimes I feel like, I'm not sure if you agree, Jessica, that unions might maybe not always get the fair shake, but what do you think is the strongest issue hitting unions right now? What you're seeing?
I think we look at two things: safety.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there's safety and there's class size ratios, right? So if we look in terms of safety, we've just come back from a pandemic, and there was a lot of anxiety for people to return to work, to make sure students could come back so that we were in a safe environment. But it ended up being the teachers' unions who were advocating for the safety measures. The funding was provided, but all of a sudden, who would have thought that things like air filters, HVAC systems, access to sanitizers would all of a sudden become bargaining issues. Like everything, you go to the store, you put your mask on,
You would think it would come from the district that these are things that we need to take care of.
Right.
And the class sizes, especially.
Class sizes. All we heard was social distance, social distance, social distance. And then, teachers were coming onto campus and looking at their rosters going, whoa, you have my classes impacted. And so, we had those desk buddies. I don't know if you had the desk buddies.
What is that?
We had like these plastic shields that were provided for each.
No.
So we have them, and I totally understand the administrative decision to purchase them, right? But we had this desk buddies, and it would have been great if they would have gotten some input from the elementary sides, from the middle school teachers, from the high school teachers, and just a couple, you know what I mean? Take a look at their desks, because they didn't fit. The little barriers on them for the little ones, they couldn't see. There had blockages where their viewpoints were. They wouldn't stay on the desk. They were like falling. With the middle school and the high school.
Oh, they'll be knocking them down all the time. Yeah.
Right. They're knocking them down. You're switching. Sometimes students can get a little creative when they have a clean slate in front of them. There was a point where we understood, we see the plexiglass everywhere when we go to the stores. And, at a certain point, there was a need for them. But little by little, the science evolved and said, hey, maybe they're not, as protective as we thought. And collectively, as a union, we had to sit there and say, you know what? CDC says these aren't necessary. Now, we don't want to take away from the teachers and the students who feel protected and feel like this is an extra layer. But we also, don't want to inhibit.
Sure.
And so, we had to bring that to the table. And it took a minute to say, this is a science, let those who want to use it, use it, but let's not make them mandatory.
Right.
Water. Right? Water is a right, not a privilege.
What do you mean by water? I mean, like it's not available.
Access to water, right?
Geez.
So right, the water, I don't know about your campus, but our campus, if you look at any of the water fountains, they're taped up.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah,
and
you're right.
They're taped up, and luckily for me, at my high school, in the cafeteria, we do have one of those water filling stations. But I don't think the kids understood what it was at first, because it doesn't look as obvious as one does at the park or at the airport. And so the district first said, okay, we're going to provide water bottles, and then we kind of had like the sparklet type of refilling stations in the cafeteria. But at the beginning, sometimes we would run out. The order of the day of delivery would change, and And then eventually that just kind of stopped. The water bottle stopped because they said, oh, this is getting too expensive.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, what about those water filling stations? Like at a certain point, you've got this extra funding for safety. We're talking about, environmental protections, right? Like this is an obvious choice, filtered water, because I don't know if I would necessarily drink the water from the water fountains. But, students and staff should have access to water. When you have sports going on,
Sure.
the athletes, the football players, they would come and they would have the little triangle cups and they were just,
Oh, wow.
and I was like, oh gosh, like bring a canteen, bring a canteen. So, advocating for those water filling stations, number one, you don't have to worry about them being delivered, right? The water's filtered, and you can have them, in visible locations around campus.
Wow.
And, the more affluent districts, they have them. So, why can't schools in urban areas have them too?
Well, that's
Our
great that
kids
that you're advocating for that, though. My gosh, because I know our district is bigger, and I don't think we're not even at that level, Jessica. We don't have that at our school. The kids bring their water bottles, but I could now see that they out ask me all the time, "Oh, can I go buy a water bottle?" And now it occurs to me, why do they have to do that? Why do they have to pay for it? They should be able to get that for
right.
free because
Water's a
water's
right. Water's not, it's a right. They should have access.
right.
So class size, right?
Yeah.
Class size. Everybody wants the data to improve. Like who is the first person or the first group of people who are getting attacked when test scores don't look the way they want them to look like? The teachers are, right? But what are the supports in place to make sure that happens? What systems do we have in place to make sure that are interventions? I mean, to get an intervention approved, it takes a long time. We've got to look at those systems. To get teachers to get additional assignments takes a long time to get that paperwork to board. When we all went out on quarantine, all of a sudden we had to change how we did things immediately.
Yeah.
Some of our teachers were ready to take on that challenge. I mean, I sat on the phone with a few teachers trying to teach them how to set up a Google Classroom and get on through Google Meets, and there was a lot of technical support that needed to be provided to make this transition.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say, Jessica, like that's such a big thing. I mean, the classroom size. I mean, you mentioned the water, but I sometimes get, and I'm not sure if you get this as being part of, in your position in the leadership there with the union, that people would say, hey, you guys make too much money. I mean, you guys have summers off, you have Christmas off, you have, all this time off, and you're making money. I mean, what do you say to people like that who just say the union is just, it's all about the money? I mean, how do you respond to that?
I disagree, right? Number one, you want teachers who reflect the community they serve in.
Yeah.
That's important. Right now, we are having trouble with the subs. We're having, even just hiring new teachers is an issue. Why? Because we're pricing them out of the housing market, right? Rent, housing. We need to have programs so that teachers can live in the communities that they teach without having to commute an hour each day.
Right.
Right. I look at some of my daughter's friends who are like 2 and 3 years of college, and they make far way more money than we do. I was like, this really? Wow. And that's 2 or 3 years out. And so it's not just about the money. We do advocate for curriculum areas. We advocate for just our facilities. We advocate for just trying to bridge some kind of equity, bringing in that parent engagement piece. And the big piece now is the whole idea of the community schools. And so community schools, that concept is huge. UTLA has started some community schools in your district. We got a grant this year where we are trying to begin that process at Montebello. And then Laco, actually, at my school site, is sponsoring a community schools partnership here. And that whole idea is that we need to work with the community and make sure that the community has access to resources, um, locally, because the whole idea is kids need their basic needs in order to learn.
Sure.
What we learned through the pandemic is our eyes were wide open to the haves and have-nots. Who had the technology at home? Who didn't? Who had the space to be able to learn digitally, and who didn't?
Right. And for those who are saying that it's all about the money, you spent a good amount of time here talking about professional development and class size. These are issues that affect academics, teaching. I mean, it goes right to the heart of it. So, man, I don't know, Jake. What's your biggest class size?
I want to tell you, Jessica, I have 42. I have 240. I have two 42s, and I'm thinking, do they really care about social distance? Because the kids they have masks on, but they're right next to each other. What does the mask matter? I mean, if you're going to be all crammed in like that, I have a kid who had to sit right in front of me because there's no other desk. So like the table I use, they're using with me because I don't have anywhere else to put them. So actually, I take it back. I have 143 and I have a 42 because of that situation. But so it's just nutty. And they say,
Right.
well, it's, go ahead.
I was going to say, and right, we're coming from a place where we were told our kids need social emotional support. Our kids need, to feel safe in schools, because some of our students were very nervous too. I subbed in a class and the hand sanitizer ran out, and I had a student who was in a panic, and I was like, it's going to take a minute.
Right.
And, at least I had my cell phone and I had the custodian.
But you're right, they're at different places, right? Just like adults are. Some of us are a little bit more, easier going about it, but others are like, hey, we got to get that right away. And so are kids. I mean,
I mentioned, I think in another video that I'm allowing things this year that I would never allow a different year. Students writing on my board and laughing and getting it, congregating. I let them do that because they're talking to each other. They're socializing, which they haven't done in a year. They lined up at my door and they were talking and laughing, and I let them. I'm giving them space because you mentioned the social emotional. Just let them be kids. They have to wear masks all day,
Right. It's and I think about that because I wear my mask, but then I get to go into my office and I'm alone.
Take
and
it off.
I can breathe.
Yes.
And then I put it back on. But when I'm out there for supervision and I have to be like the mask police, I feel a little bad because I'm like, God, these kids have it all day long. Our teachers, unless they truly get a break, and people may not understand. There are kids hanging out in your room at nutrition. There are kids hanging out in your room at lunchtime because they're looking for safe spaces and or they're looking for help. And so, you never really have a moment as a teacher to turn it off.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My door is always open. I don't let it go. And you know what? But that's the way it is. I mean, like the teachers and most teachers they care, and we have a great profession, and I'm so glad. And that kind of brings me up to my next question. I just have a couple more for you. This is I have two friends who are Jewish teachers who are real close by me, and recently our district took a stand on the Palestine-Israel situation. And I wasn't sure why they did that. They took a side, let's say, and they were concerned. Obviously, they took the Palestinian side, and so they're like, "God, Jacob, I don't understand why our union doing this." I go, "I don't get it either." And they were to the point where they're thinking, "I'm gonna opt out financially," and I was thinking the same thing too. And I'm like, I don't know why. And then I think they've got a lot of pushback, and they're saying, "Oh no, we're not going to take a side here. We're just, we support both groups, and want them to live in harmony and so forth." I said, "Okay, that's great. That was a good way of handling it." But sometimes I think the unions get kind of pinpoint like they're too political. What would you say about that, or to that? I'm not sure about your union. I know ours could get kind of political. How do you feel about that?
Actually, I see more of that like at the bigger conferences when we're at the CTA, actually at the NEA, because I haven't gone to an official CTA one at the NEA, but we caucus as a California delegation, and then we go into the national side when the convention is going on. And it becomes very heated.
Sure, I bet.
And you'll hear the vantage points of both sides. And so I think it's important for all sides to be heard. I'm not sure
Not to take a side though,
where,
but like to at least hear the sides, right?
right, like I think we need to make sure that the information is out there. Like when it kind of aligns itself with that whole idea of ethnic studies, right? We need to make sure that we're teaching all perspectives so that people are aware and understand where these issues are coming from, the history behind them, the passion behind them, um, so that as we create, I guess, citizens, right?
Yes.
Then they can create their own ideologies in terms of, are you going to be more conservative? Are you going to be more liberal?
Sure.
But I think our job is to educate, and our job is to make sure that all voices are heard in a respectable way, and that people have a safe space to show their views. But we just want to make sure that while we're doing that, there's no hate that's going on, right? Like
For sure.
peaceful space so that people can acknowledge their identities, where they come from, and the history behind who they are.
Yeah. And I think most teachers do that. And obviously there's some who don't, but that's such a safe move that where you just, hey, like I tell my students, I'd like to give both sides of an argument and say, you guys decide. It's just to hear the arguments and do your own research, right? So you could come up with that, your own conclusions. But as long as you have your own arguments, that's great.
Right. And I think you brought up a question before in terms of the media and the teachers.
Yeah, that's right.
There is like this misconception that teachers are a bunch of, lefty liberals, right? Right. I might be a lefty liberal, right? But, it just amazes me when I go to these like conventions and you see the conservative voice, you hear the moderate
That's good to
voice.
know. That's good.
Like it is across the board. Like I had a friend who was like a conservative, and I said, I know it sounds like, we're very liberal in our viewpoints and therefore, but I want to say that when the decisions are made at the national, at the state level, that the conservative voices, the moderate voices, they're there in the room, they're dialoguing,
Okay.
and they're giving their viewpoint, they're giving their concerns, and it's all, to benefit kids.
That's great. I'm glad you shared that. You know what? Just listening to you, just made me think about these new teachers that are coming in. And we just talked about that, how a few years ago, obviously they're getting pixel, but now we have all this. I know at my school, I think we have like 10 to 12 new teachers, and I might be under the number. I think I might be over. And that being said, what would you say to a new teacher wanting to what would be the good argument to join the union? Because you don't have to be in a union, but what's the encouragement of being a member? What would you tell that new teacher?
I think the encouragement, and it's important right now, is that we need to be together, right? Stronger together. Our voices need to be heard. There are going to be times in your career where things are smooth sailing, and then there's going to be times where stuff happens, and as collectively as a group, we are going to need to make our voices heard. When UTLA had their strike, right? We were bargaining that year. I was actually on bargaining that team. Okay. And we were bargaining that year. We were watching you, and we were in our negotiations, and your efforts and your voices helped us.
Oh, good.
And I think, we're starting to hear across the country unions vocalizing, their desire to have better working conditions. And so it's important. It's not just about pay, although, making sure that we have, but it's a part of it. It is an important part of it, but it's also about advocating for students. It's also advocating for community. It's advocating for facilities. It's making sure that we have a seat at the table so that good decisions can be made so that we have thriving districts and educational systems.
No, I appreciate that because I know a lot of times I've talked to people where it's like, oh, it's not about the kids. No, I mean, what you've been sharing today, it's all about the kids, and of course for the teachers as well. But because that's what we do, we work with kids all day. So to look
Mhm.
at the class space, to make sure they're drinking water that's free, that they don't have to go be paying for it. These are all important things, and I know there'll be some other issues in the future coming up, Jessica, and I hope we have a chance to talk to you about those issues. And I know Ruben and I really appreciate you being on here. Ruben, you have anything else you'd like to share before we let this wonderful person go?
No, I appreciate the discussion on these issues, especially. I'm fascinated by the class size thing. Um,
And
and
I'm just going to say, it's just not class size, it's counselor ratios. It's
That's right.
ratios to nurses, ratios to school psychologists.
Oh, that's important.
So it's
And you
all
guys
about bargaining
and you guys
dollars,
do that bargaining, right? Part of the bargaining is the nurses and all that.
right?
That's a big
And
piece.
yeah,
and
talk about making good use of the money. We need to spend the money. I've heard that before. Well, here we could spend it here. More counselors.
we need social workers on campus now.
We
Social
do
workers.
right now, especially these kids. I mean, I have so many kids who just come to me and they want to talk to somebody. I say, oh, we have a psychologist, but I would love to have more of them on campus, or a social worker as well. So yeah, thank you
This
for
is a
that.
good discussion, and it's ongoing. So I appreciate
Yes.
that, Jessica.
Yes. Thanks, Jessica, for coming on, and we appreciate you, and keep doing the good work.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.